The Sultan of Oman Television. First, the headlines. Counting of ballots continue for the fourth day in the U.S. presidential race, and Biden is closing in. The global COVID-19 cases nears to 50 million, and Victoria State in Australia is COVID-free for 18 consecutive days. And the foreign deposits in Central Bank of Oman exceed 6.6 billion Omani riyals this year. Those are the headlines, and now for the news in detail. Joe Biden, inching closer to victory after a bitter presidential election, appealed to Americans to turn the page on divisions as a seething Donald Trump warned him not to declare victory. As trickling returns from Pennsylvania and 3 other states made Trump's path to a second term increasingly unlikely, Biden repeated that he believed he would win, but said he would wait for the process to complete. Instead, Biden delivered a late-night address with the tone of a president-elect and vowed to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic as new cases yesterday hit a new high of more than 127,000 cases. Biden said he and Kamala Harris had already been meeting experts on how to control the skyrocketing cases of COVID-19, which had claimed more than 230,000 lives in the United States, more than in any other country. Biden's lead grew in Pennsylvania, which would hand him the keys to the White House if he secures its 20 votes in the Electoral College that determines presidential races. Biden was also ahead in Arizona and Georgia, 2 states that have not voted for Democrats in the 21st century, as well as Nevada, while Trump held a slim lead in North Carolina. The Australian state of Victoria had its 8th day in a row of no new virus cases or deaths, ahead of another move back to normal living, including no limits on travel outside Melbourne and the resumption of flights to New Zealand. Victoria Premier Daniel Andrews is expected to announce another relaxation of rules tomorrow, including the removal of Melbourne's so-called Ring of Steel. No longer confined within a 25-kilometre radius, the city's residents will be allowed to travel throughout the state. Travel freedom is expected to expand again when the border with New South Wales states reopens to Victorians on November 23rd. Victoria's latest virus wave, which resulted in more than 18,000 infections and 800 deaths, has been traced to outbreaks amongst staff at 2 hotels that were acting as quarantine locations for arriving overseas passengers. The novel coronavirus has killed at least 1.24 million people since the outbreak emerged in China last December. At least 49.32 million cases of coronavirus have been registered. Of these, more than 32.2 million are now considered recovered. The United States is the worst affected country, with 236,099 deaths from 9.74 million cases. After the U.S., the hardest hit countries are Brazil, with 162,015 deaths, India 125,562, Mexico 94,323, and the United Kingdom with 48,475 deaths. Europe reported 301,666 deaths, while Asia 175,761, the Middle East 63,808, Africa 44,460, and Oceania recorded 941 deaths. Britain today banned entry to all non-resident foreigners coming from Denmark after a mutated version of the coronavirus linked to minx farms was found in humans. The abrupt ban was announced by the Transport Department overnight and took effect at 0400 GMT. Denmark on Wednesday announced the mutation had jumped from minks to humans and infected 12 people in the country's north. It has warned that the mutation could threaten the effectiveness of any future vaccine for COVID-19. Under the British ban, UK citizens and permanent residents returning directly or indirectly from Denmark will now need to self-isolate for 14 days, along with everyone else in their household. No other foreigners can come in to Britain from Denmark. The requirements will be reviewed after a week, the Transport Department said, just a day after removing Denmark from a safe travel list, but stopping short of an outright ban. Ethiopia moved today to replace the leadership in the country's northern Tigray region, where clashes between regional forces and those of the federal government have led to fears that a major African power could slide into civil war. Neither side appeared to welcome the dialogue that experts say is needed to avert disaster. The vote by the upper house of parliament, the House of Federation, to set up an interim administration needs no further approval, and it gives the Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, the power to carry out the measures against a Tigray leadership in his government, regards as illegal. In a new statement today, the Nobel Peace Prize winning Prime Minister asserted that criminal elements cannot escape the rule of law under the guise of seeking reconciliation, and a call for dialogue. Experts and diplomats are watching in dismay as two heavily armed forces clash in one of the world's most strategic yet vulnerable region, the Horn of Africa. Observers warn that civil war in Ethiopia, Africa's second most populous country with 110 million people, could destabilize neighbors such as Sudan, Eritrea, and Somalia. Searchers in Guatemala dug through mud and debris looking for an estimated 100 people believed buried by a massive rain-fueled landslide as the remnants of Hurricane Eta strengthened earlier today as the storm churned towards Cuba. It was forecast to become a tropical storm again today as it moved over the Caribbean Sea, and the U.S. National Hurricane Center issued tropical storm watches for the northwestern Bahamas, southern Florida, and the Florida Keys. Back in Central America, where it reached as a Category 4 hurricane Tuesday before weakening into a tropical depression, authorities from Panama to Mexico were still surveying the damage from flooding and landslides following days of torrential rain. The confirmed death toll was in the dozens and expected to rise. In southern Mexico, across the border from Guatemala, 19 people died as heavy rain attributed to it caused mudslides and swelling streams and rivers. Still to come in our news bulletin. The Governorate of Worcester witnesses heavy to light rain. Welcome back to the news from the Sultan of Oman television. Foreign assets and deposits at the Central Bank of Oman's CBO reached over 6.6 billion Omani riyals this year. The CBO stated that foreign currency deposits recorded an increase by 17.9% by the end of August, as the deposits increased by 491 million Omani riyals this year. The foreign assets at the Central Bank of Oman include three elements, namely foreign currency deposits, which reached 3.2 billion Omani riyals by the end of August, reserve accounts of the International Monetary Fund, which amounts to 152 million Omani riyals, and securities that reach 3.3 billion Omani riyals. The average price of Oman crude oil recorded a decline by 26.8% by the end of September 2020, amounting to $47.20 per barrel, compared to the price of September 2019, which amounted to $64.60 per barrel. The National Center for Statistics and Information stated that the Sultanate's exports of crude oil and condensates by the end of September amounted to 215,724,400 barrels. The majority of Oman exports of crude oil and condensates goes to China, with around 190,534,000 barrels. The Sultanate's total production and imports of natural gas reached 33,995,000,000 cubic meters by the end of September, decreasing by 0.7% compared to last year, in which the production and imports reached 34,237,000,000 cubic meters. The statistics issued by the National Center for Statistics and Information showed that around 59% of the natural gas usage in the Sultanate went to the industrial projects by the end of September, as the usages of natural gas for such projects reached 20,078,000,000 cubic meters. National Records and Archives Authority published the first part of the Omani-British relationship from 17th to 19th century in the volume 21st of the Research and Study Series on National and International Documents. The book comes in 488 pages and it includes 14 researches, 11 in Arabic and 3 in the English language, in addition to expanding documentary appendix on subjects of interest. The book gives a balanced account to researchers in Omani history and Omani-British relations from political, economic and military dimensions. A report released by the Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Innovation stated that the number of higher education institutes this year increased to 9 private universities and 19 colleges that offers around 350 academic programs. The report attributed the increase in the number of the offered academic programs to the associated increase in the quality to develop work environment and education bar. The ministry reported that the last 5 academic years witnessed a noticeable development in the number of approved programs in the private universities and colleges, as 150 academic programs was approved after being reviewed by external specialized assessors. Worcester Governorate witnessed medium to heavy rainfall in a number of villages. Here's some footage of the wadis in Kaloof in the Wilayat of Mahout. This is the South Central Command Television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. Counting of ballot continues for the 4th day in the U.S. presidential race, and Biden is closing in. The global COVID-19 cases nears to 50 million, and Victoria State in Australia is COVID-free for 18 consecutive days. And the foreign deposits in Central Bank of Oman exceed 6.6 billion Omani Riyals this year. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. From all of us here at the newsroom and the studio, it's good night.